good afternoon. How are you?
Hi, we're from Eastside and we're doing 73 questions with Dr. Francis-Maurer. So first, where does Francis-Maurer come from?
Oh, hi. Good afternoon. Thank you for taking the time to speak to me today. In the beginning, for the first kind of 37 years of my life, I was David Francis, and my then husband-to-be was Adam Maurer. And when we were lucky enough to get married, we decided to become the Francis-Maurers. So he is Adam Francis-Maurer and I'm David Francis-Maurer.
Let's take a pivot. Tea or coffee?
Coffee. I know that sounds strange, throw your tea in the river. No taxation without representation, but I drink a lot of coffee. But saying that, for my wedding, we did have like a big afternoon tea where we sat down and we had loose leaf tea with everybody. So that was nice.
Starbucks or Costa?
Neither. I used to be a heavy smoker, and in England when the smoking ban came about, Cafe Nero was like an Italian coffee shop where it was like the last place you were allowed to smoke, and it had the best Italian coffee. So I go there now. Obviously I don't smoke anymore, smoking is bad, don't do it, but it has like a special place in my heart for when I was like at college.
Now the question everyone is dying to know. Why move?
I married an American in America. And the law changed to allow us to get married. One of the things I found strange about the move was that in England, if you are born to a Jewish mother, you're identifiable as Jewish, and I wasn't. My mother was Christian, and so it was harder for us to find a synagogue to get married in. In America, even though my husband is Jewish and I wasn't born Jewish, you were allowed to get married in a synagogue. So one of the reasons with that was to get married here. He has a company in Boston, and it's expanding to Philadelphia, which is where we live. And I was also super lucky to work under Dr. Perry at the University of Pennsylvania. And so when this opportunity came up, I grabbed it with both hands.
Have you mastered driving on the right side of the road?
If you ask the staff here, they would say no. I would say I'm making rapid progress. I got my license about 4 weeks ago. Parking is a struggle. But driving in a straight line is quite easy. Turning right I find easier than turning left.
Rugby or American football?
Rugby. American football is a misnomer. 99% of it is played with your hands. So why it's called football, I do not understand. The question you should be asking, is it rugby league or rugby union? I'll let you have a think about that one.
So are you a football fan?
No. I think in the first question most people ask me when they see me is, do you like soccer? Do you like football? Like, what's your team? It was never really that big a deal for me. I think in this school, Dr. Perry has a strength in baseball. Mr. Edwards has a strength as a D1 athlete in football. Miss Kiak was the basketball coach. Me personally, I'd be playing the clarinet in the marching band, or like auditioning for Puck in the theatre production. Sport was important to me, but soccer is a hard pass for me.
But if you had to choose, Manchester or Tottenham?
Manchester or Tottenham, neither. I went to Imperial for my university, and that was right next to Chelsea's football ground. So I think at one point I owned a football shirt. But there we go. Are you okay to do this like on the fly? Can we walk and do that at the same time? Super fantastic. I'm gonna bring my drink just in case I need to think of time. Yeah?
What's the most noticeable difference between British and American schools?
It's a big question. In British schools, you do public exams at the end of the year. And so what your GPA is throughout the year kind of means very little. And you do the public exams, and then depending on how you do the exam, that's the kind of the class you go into. Whereas in America, there's this kind of micromanagement of my GPA is this, and it goes on that. In England, it's about the learning. I think for high schools, there's no such thing as senioritis, because at the end of your senior year, you take your big exam. So that is like the best performance. It's not like now I can, now I've got into college, I can relax. Yeah.
What's the best thing about living in the States so far?
I would say the people. I think it's nice to be an immigrant, and it's nice to understand different cultures. I find American kids attempting a British accent to be like a personal kind of like little gotcha moment in the day, but no, it's just everyone here is so lovely. So I identify as an American now that I have a passport, but obviously my heart is British. I'll put my drink down.
Now, can you do a convincing American accent?
I can.
Let's hear
Well, I
it.
mean, I can't. It's probably like your opinion. So in America, people tend to elongate their vowels. So they'll be like, oh my God, right? There's a dog. As opposed to a British person who's like, oh my God, there is a dog. Yeah? It's the best I got.
What's the strangest American slang you've encountered?
It's not slang. I think one that bothered me the most when I was here is about sharing. So I have an older sister, she's 1 year older than me. And if we had like a packet of sweets and we said that we'd share, I would have some of hers and she would have some of mine. In America, they're like, I'm gonna share this with you. And then people just give me something. I'm a bit like, that's not sharing. Like some of the words don't make sense.
What do you find most surprising about American culture?
Most surprising about American culture. I think there's a little bit of a race to the middle. It can be a little bit beige. It can be a little bit, let's have a pizza, let's have some pasta, let's have something beige. I think in England there's a much greater diversity of like languages. You're going to fall behind that chair. And like the languages people speak, I think is really important. And the food they eat here, you would go and buy a curry, whereas in like England, I would know the difference between a Nepalese curry or an Indian curry or a Bangladeshi curry or somewhere, you know, from like northern Pakistan. There's like another level to the diversity. So that's a bit strange for me.
Speaking of food, have you adjusted to American portion sizes?
I mean, I've been with an American for like 16 years, and my mother-in-law currently stays with us. So I think it's pretty similar. I still struggle with calling chips French fries because that's not accurate. And I think biscuits are kind of what you call cookies. So that's kind of more at the forefront of my mind than like how big the biscuits are, which are actually cookies.
What's the best piece of advice you received before moving to the States?
Approach everything as a listening conference and be coachable. So I don't know what I don't know, and if I don't know it, I'll kind of like lean into that and say, actually, can you say more about that? Like, how can I use both of my ears at this opportunity? Because particularly when I get confused, it's not that anyone's trying to like harm me, it's the fact that it's just a gap, right? How you doing? You can come past. We're gonna go fist bump.
I'm his favorite.
I'm his favorite. Wow, Kat. You're one of my favorites, yeah? Okay, go on.
Top 5.
Top. Sure.
Top 10.
Thank you. He's going to keep on shouting the numbers, yeah.
What's the most challenging part of adapting to American school culture?
I think kind of the vigilance of the GPA can somehow distract people from learning. So if you say to me you can't solve an equation, people are interested in whether or not that affects the GPA, as opposed to, I got the door for you, whether you can actually solve the equation. I'm much more used to like a standards-based grading assessment. Like, tell me about how you use paragraphs, or how are you using tone in English. Here it's like, how does that affect my GPA? Which I think is actually distracting sometimes for the students learning. The way that shows up for me, every time I meet a kid, I say, can you please show me your work? Like, I want to see your essay. And the kids always have this element of surprise, like, you want to see my mathematics book? And I'm like, yes, your GPA is only like part of the picture. So I find that challenging because people expect me to be leading the GPA, whereas actually I'm trying to help lead learning. I'm definitely going to fall down these stairs. You're doing really well walking backwards, yeah?
So, what do you teach here, or what role do you have here at East?
Oh, so I'm assistant principal. I am personally responsible for the 525 students in the class of 2027, which is obviously an amazing number because it's a prime number. I also have about 40 staff I'm directly responsible for. I have the mathematics faculty. I have the... Hello, how you doing, sir?
Good.
Did you hear that you're the Lamplighter today?
What's that?
Do you know what Lamplighter is? I'm going to be 30 seconds. We can keep going with this. So in the administrative team, we have to highlight somebody who has been like a blessing. And so you were my lamplighter today, which meant that in the administrative team meeting, I spoke about what a positive influence you are on the mathematics department and how you came to the meeting.
Oh yeah. Oh, thank you. Appreciate
Nice
it. I just had
you should be filming him, not me. Yeah?
No, we're good. Get my good side.
Yeah?
Good side.
Right, I'm like, not my bald head.
I just completed the restraint training or whatever for 2 days, so that's why I wasn't here.
Listen, I
And-
missed you.
Yeah, you missed me today. I'll be here tomorrow.
Yeah,
And
good.
tonight, I'll be back tonight.
Great. Yeah, he's
So it's
amazing.
gonna be good.
You should film him. Yeah? Good.
Been here a long time.
Right, longer than me. Nice to see you, sir.
Yes, you too. Thank you.
Okay, go on.
What's your favorite American holiday tradition so far?
I have mixed feelings about July the 4th. As you might expect, you know, you don't really teach children about a war that you lost. But the way I've kind of overcome that is I became a citizen on July the 3rd. So actually there was this moment where I was like pledging allegiance and everything else. And then the following day I was an American. So I'm looking forward to the next July the 4th where I'm actually an American for more than one day.
What's the biggest misconception Americans have about British people?
I think when Europeans look at Americans, they see America as like one big place. And when you're here, you know that living in Boston or living in Alabama or living in Texas is very different. Some Americans talk about being European as if it's a monolith. Actually living in London or Paris or Berlin or Madrid or Lisbon are very different things. So when people say I'm going to Europe for a week, I don't know how to hide the shock on my face, honestly.
Do you miss Britain?
Yes, my mother still lives there. It's where I went to school. My friends who are my age now have children, and so I miss seeing them, but I also miss watching their children grow up. There's only a certain amount of that you can do via Instagram. Like I go back and this kid's gone from a twinkle in their parent's eye into being like somebody who's in school. So missing that kind of generational development is sad for me.
If there was one place that you could recommend to anyone visiting Britain, where would you tell them to go?
Shakespeare's Globe. So for the millennium, so I was 18 years old in 1999, and there was a thing called Y2K, where everybody thought that the computers would crash, and one of Britain's responses was to buy lots of projects like for the millennium. There was the Millennium Dome and the Millennium Eye, and one thing they did was they reconstructed Shakespeare's Globe exactly as it would have been 400 years ago. So you can go and stand in the rain and watch Macbeth with like the kind of the actors moving through you. That is like it's such an important thing to do, to see theatre like in the round.
Ever experienced culture shock?
Yes, constantly, every day. About language, about voices. There's more that I don't know, but again, if I don't know it, I'll try and lean into it and, you know, try and make the most of it because I'm kind of here to stay.
What song is constantly playing in your head?
What song is playing constantly in my head? Ooh, I don't know. That's a great question. I have to come back to you on that one.
Sweet or savory?
Oh, you want me to walk backwards? I'm not Michael Jackson. Okay. Sweet or savory? I'm going to go with sweet. You know, we live very close to a cheesecake factory, so I'm not against picking up that. I'm trying not to walk into anything. It's okay.
What fictional character are you most like?
Which fictional character am I most like? I don't know. I would like to think that I'm a helper. I'd like to think that there's probably like a doctor or a nurse that was able to like serve a community, even though I'm not a medical doctor. Like on the airplane, when they say, "Is there a doctor on board?" I kind of go, "Yes, but I really can't help you." So I think maybe somebody who has a faith that is around service feels important to me. So I'd go for maybe like a nurse in a British TV sitcom that you may not have heard. You know?
Describe yourself in 3 words or less.
These are good questions. Okay, I'm going to go with compassionate, creative, and curious. Compassionate because I tend to see humans. Creative because I tend to come from a different country, different state, so I'm presented as unusual. And creative because I always think there's like a different way of doing something. And it may be that when you reflect on it, you do what you've always been doing, but I think having that, like, what else could we do or how else could we do it feels important. So I think that's 3: compassionate, creative, and curious. I always like to know something new.
Do you follow cricket?
Yes, insofar as that my mother goes to a cricket match and that will take 5 days. And so actually what happens is she'll go and have like a picnic with her friends. And that's great, so I follow it, but I don't really, you know, I mean, how do you watch a 5-day sport? You know, so yes and no.
Do you know the rules of cricket?
Absolutely. I can try and do a little kind of like wicket, and we can kind of like bat the ball away, so you do the overs and everything else. I used to play cricket. Cricket was one of the school rotations at school.
Can you describe the rules in 5 5 rules in cricket for people who don't know what it is.
Okay, so I want you to imagine that there's a wicket, which is a little stick at one end over there and one end over here, and then you have 2 batsmen. And the 2 batsmen are the only 2 people from one team on the field at any one time. The entire other team is kind of spread around the field, and so somebody will come along and they will bowl a ball, and the goal is to try and hit the wicket off the other little sticks. The man in front of it is supposed to defend the wicket against the ball. If you manage to hit it and you swap places with your team member, you get 1 run. If you hit it and it hits the piece of rope that's around the outside, you get 4 runs. If you smack it and the ball goes over the rope, then you get 6 runs. And so the team with the most runs wins, which is why it takes 5 days. And obviously if the ball hits the wicket, then that batter is out. So then another batter from the other team comes out.
What's your current obsession?
Driving on the right-hand side of the road. It does occupy a lot of my thoughts, and I think everybody knows that I'm not the best driver, so I do have a lot of conversations about driving. We just had to change our registration plates from Massachusetts to Philadelphia, and I think when I move to New Jersey next year, I'm going to have to change them again, because as a country, you've got to have 1 registration plate. So yeah, driving is my current obsession.
Favorite dessert?
Cheesecake is good. I'm not against the cheesecake. When I was 40, I was lucky enough to have a birthday cake that was in the shape of a red double-decker bus, and that was my most liked Instagram post, because it was like this beautiful red bus. It felt sacrilegious to eat it, but obviously I devoured it because it was my birthday. So yeah, I still look back on a good birthday cake. I think it's nice.
Favorite snack?
I'm not against an Oreo. I'm a bit confused by coming to America and people have like those Oreos that are like in the little dipping things as opposed to having the cookie. I'm a cookie Oreo. I don't want double stuffed. I don't want a yellow one, just a normal straight Oreo. Hi, they're just doing a video so they might see you in the background. It's okay.
Describe what made you choose this outfit today.
This outfit today, wow, okay. So honestly, it's back to school night tonight, which meant that I had to be in a very formal suit. So I have to have black shoes, a bit more comfortable. I have to have the suit. So I wanted to wear something comfortable. I wasn't meeting any families today. If I meet families, I put a tie on. It's back to school night, I put a jacket on. So I wanted to be comfortable. It's kind of autumn, which you call fall. And this is one of my favorite, we'd call it a gilet. You'd probably call it like a sleeveless jacket. I wanted something that was warm that didn't have sleeves because you're still like moving your arms as you go out. And then Penn because my husband was an undergraduate at Penn and I did a school leadership program at the University of Pennsylvania. So I've got stuff like this in the cupboard. You know, it also doesn't crease. So even if your shirt's a bit kind of like raggedy, you can put this over it and it kind of smartens things up.
Are you a morning person or an evening owl?
Morning, 100%. I wake up at 5, I've got 2 dogs, I'm up and about, get to work at 7 o'clock, people see I have a lot of energy, and that's even before I have a coffee. It means that I do go to bed about 9 p.m.
Have any weird food obsessions?
I like British food more now that I'm not in Britain. So like when I was there, I was like, this is mid, like this is average, what is happening? But now I'm like fish and chips, like I think about it, and you go to America and there's someone going, you can have fish and chips. It's really sad and disappointing. Like this is not what I was expecting it to be, trade descriptions. So I do miss my mother's cooking, but also food from England.
Do you still keep up with British politics?
Absolutely. I mean, I can now vote in this country, which is good, but I think you've got to stay aware because there's a massive impact on my mother's life, and I think you should always be aware of what's going on around the world. I did note that the Indian economy just became the 5th largest economy in the world, overtaking Britain. I remember learning as a child that at some point these things would change, and that made me feel really good because I've got like a lot of Indian friends, and like it's interesting seeing, in 20 years time these things will happen. When these things actually happen, you're like, I remember my teacher telling me about this and thinking, there's no way, and then now it's like there's 1 billion people there, you know. So I think it's super important, particularly now I have a different lens of the world to talk about like international relations.
How often do you keep up with American politics?
A lot. Like I'm married to an American, and my American mother-in-law lives with us at the moment. My husband's father, who's no longer with us, used to be a Republican commissioner, and my husband's mother was a Democrat, so they always had like really interesting conversations, and we kind of identify as through the center. I think it's just a really interesting place to be, to arrive in a country that you've always watched and then suddenly have the opportunity to vote. I would definitely vote every time, and I would encourage everybody to vote. I'm obviously not going to tell you how I'm going to vote, but I do find that, like, you know, on some topics, I'm more aligned with one party than another.
Can you share one amusing language misunderstanding you've experienced?
One amusing language. I mean, I did the share one already, which was kind of a good one. I was in a meeting with the PTA. Oh, sir, how are you doing? Yeah. And the PTA were talking about mums, M-U-M, and I was there, and I had like such shock. And they were talking about some sort of baked good that was like a hoagie or something, and I was like, that's my mother, like that's Karina Francis. So mum obviously means something different because you have mom and we have mum, but obviously mum means some sort of bread good. You know, I was like, not for me, thank you very much.
Can you name all 50 US states?
I think if I had a piece of paper, I could. I'd probably learn it by doing like North and South Dakota, like doing those things and do the coast. It may take me a while to get some of those like mid-states in the middle. I would be able to do like 35 quickly and maybe 50 with a piece of paper.
Are there any British traditions you miss celebrating while in the US?
I do. I do think that having a cup of tea in the afternoon is super important. I would encourage anybody who wants to talk to me about setting up a tea club for one of the activities would be great, because not everybody wants to run around with a lacrosse stick like every night, and that's okay. And sometimes it's okay to just sit and be with your friends and be in community, and you could experience a British tea ceremony, a Korean tea ceremony, a Japanese tea ceremony. It might be nice just to bring different groups of people together.
Can you describe the differences in work culture you've observed between the two countries?
It's definitely more individualistic here, and there's definitely like a kind of a capitalism that shows up in different ways. So, for example, when I went to university, if I got above 70% in a test, I would be, hi, no, it's good. Come on by. I get a break from talking, right? If I got above 70% in a test at university, I was in the top 10% for my grade. If somebody doesn't get like a 90 here, then they're like, wow, something's gone wrong. So the grade inflation is like massive. If I came home with a 65, I was having cheesecake. Like, I was there. Somebody gets a 65 here, and they're like, oh, what's gone wrong? So the grade inflation, because of the colleges and because of the capitalism, is huge. Everybody expects to get an A for everything, whereas in England, it's not, and in Europe, it's not the same.
Any new hobbies or interests you've picked up?
I'm tending to read from a different kind of library of authors at the moment. I think in Europe, you know, we have a very particular lens around, you know, the authors that are just in the library and spoken about in the media. I'm definitely reading a lot more kind of black female authors to understand the black female experience in America, because we don't really have the same access to that. So people like Toni Morrison and Dr. Maya Angelou, you know, I've heard of them, but now I'm in a place where, I'm beginning to better understand. I don't know what it's like to be black, I don't know what it's like to be a woman, but I can certainly read the authors, and I think reading from people who have a different viewpoint of view is incredibly important to understanding the culture that you're working with.
Can you share a book recommendation with us?
Anyone?
Anyone.
I would say Wolf Hall by Hilary Mantel. So it won the Booker Prize, which is like the second biggest literature prize in the world. So the Nobel Prize for Literature is big. Wolf Hall is basically about Henry VIII and Thomas Cromwell. And if you want a good sense of Britain before America even existed, Wolf Hall, WOLFHALL, is a great book, and you won't be disappointed with that book.
What is your stance on school uniform?
My sister had a big struggle with this, because at 16 years old, she had to wear a tie, and the message to her was, we're preparing you for the world of work. And so she was always like, which women wear ties, right? So it was all a bit of that was where my attention went. For me as a man, I put a tie when I meet families. I like to wear a tie. Funny story, I think it's funny, you may not think it's funny. My sister was 1 year older than me, and we went to a primary school that was in London, so it wasn't as cold as Boston. And my sister went to school, and she was fine. When I went to school, I was told I had to wear shorts, and it was a school uniform. So my mother was like, that's fine. Even through the winter, and in the spring you had to wear shorts. And so I remember my mother being horrified, and so what I had to do was I had to wear like 2 pairs of shorts and 2 pairs of long socks that covered my knee, because it was a good school and you had to wear shorts for the first year. So my mother was like, I'm not going to pull him out of the school because of the uniform. So I think some of it can be like an abuse of power. For me, I do think freedom of expression is important, as long as it doesn't kind of infringe on anybody else's rights.
How does the American education system handle diversity compared to the UK?
It's a big question. I mean, I think it very much depends on the state that you're in, and the school district you're in, and the site that you're in, and the people that you work with. I think it's incredibly important for students to see people who look like them and sound like them and have a similar experience. As a gay man, hopefully I am opening the door for other people to walk through, but I obviously identify as like a white man in America. So I think it's important to employ a diverse group of staff that represents the community, and I think that's true in both countries.
Do you have a favorite British snack?
So chocolate comes to mind because it's different. So you can buy Dairy Milk or Cadbury's chocolate here and Dairy Milk Cadbury's chocolate there. It tastes different. Yours is very kind of buttery. Ours is a little bit like salty. And so it looks the same, but it's not the same. And so it's difficult to describe. It's like if I said, what's the difference between Coke and Pepsi? You'd know the difference by tasting it, but describing that to somebody is actually incredibly difficult. So I kind of miss some of those things where it's just a little slight kind of deviation almost. Hi, you can come past, don't worry. I need like a break. Go on. Go on.
Favorite American snack?
I think you do steak here very well, which I know is not a snack. I do love going to Costco. I just think I feel so American when it's like piled really high and it's about to fall on you, and you can't just buy one thing of popcorn, you have to buy the popcorn that's like this. I feel like, wow, the size of it all is great. It's not a snack. It goes back to your earlier question of portion size. Yeah.
What's your favorite thing about being a vice principal at an American school?
I think it's a combination of being an outsider who's also an insider. Like, I think this is the type of school that values a diversity of thought. So I think had I come in with lots of different ideas, some people may be resistant, but people here, because it's such a successful school, are receptive. They're like, what happens in Boston? What happens in London? And they're open to the reflection. So I'm really grateful to have landed somewhere where I can learn from other people and they can perhaps consider some of the experiences that I've had.
What is one element of the British school system American schools should implement?
I do think that starting every meeting with a family and their child with demonstrations of learning is incredibly important, right? I've experienced families come in and families go, and kids come in and kids go, but until you can show me your English essay and your science investigation and your mathematics book, I don't really know who you are as a learner, which is our major role. Like, families are experts on their children, but I will start every one of my meetings as far as I can with, this is their work, right? This is their learning, this is what they know, this is what they need to work on.
Have you embraced the American habit of tipping in restaurants?
Yeah, you have to. I mean, some of these staff are not even paid, like never mind a minimum wage. So you have to, whereas in England, you don't have to tip because they're paid like a good amount of money. So I think that's incredibly important.
What is one English thing you miss?
I tend to miss listening to people on the street. I think when you sit on like public transport and it's Turkish and Arabic and Russian, everyone's just listening to the diversity of language is just really enriching to you to work out how that is. Here there's a lot of English and a lot of Spanish, so that's where we are. Hello?
I didn't interrupt.
No, you can come past. You can come past. Sorry. Hello.
Pause.
Have you adopted any American phrases or expressions into your vocabulary?
I was devastated when I started to say sidewalk rather than pavement. Like, I found myself saying it and I was like, wow, I think the words are changing quicker than my voice.
So, walk us through your career.
Oh, okay. So I did a course called Teach First, which is very similar to Teach for America, which takes people from certain universities and put them in schools that have struggles to recruit. And so I was a mathematics teacher, wasn't sure I was going to do it for like a long period of time, but knew that I love mathematics. Like even within the category of people that love mathematics, I love mathematics. And I did, 20 hours of mathematics each week for 4 years. So being a mathematics teacher felt like something I should try, and then I just fell in love with it. And I fell in love with helping other people teach and having a positive impact on students in my classroom and other people's classrooms.
What do you think is most important for students to learn?
In a school, I'd probably say that there are like 3 types of trust. There's like trust between students, there's like trust between students and adults, and there's like trusting yourself. Like if you don't trust yourself, it's very difficult to get other people to trust you and work with you. So those 3 things are kind of interrelated.
How do you think AI is going to change education?
I think it's incredibly exciting, personally. I think you have to change. 1 second, we've just got people coming. You can come past. Can we do the... Yeah? It's like, this is David, right? This is David. Yes.
Hi, David.
Hi, David.
I say David.
I knew David. All right, bye. Your question was about AI? I think it's going to change, like, assessment. Like, maybe writing an essay isn't the best way to assess what somebody knows about something. And so whether you do a group project, when you do a portfolio, I think that's important. I don't think it's going to replace everybody. I think it may replace certain sectors in certain fields. And for example, in a student aspect, if you have ADHD, for example, and there are people in my family with ADHD, and you, one of the symptoms of ADHD is sometimes just struggling to get started. If you work somewhere and you log into ChatGPT and it gives you like a little basic skeleton, it's then going to enable you to start a lot quicker. So I think there are some real benefits to students who are particularly neurodiverse. So I'm a big fan.
What is your #1 goal for yourself this year?
I would hope that everybody who I work with has felt that I make a positive contribution to their ability to do their job. Right? That they feel listened to, that they feel seen, that they feel respected, whether that is a secretary or a custodian or an administrator, that everybody who I have some contact with thinks, you know what, because of this year, I've been able to reflect, or I've been able to like consider what I'm doing, or I've been able to improve something. No matter how small it is, I would hope to be able to make like a small positive contribution to everyone's kind of ability to do their own job.
How do you approach discipline in schools?
In England, it's about putting coins in the jar. So if we have a relationship, if we sit in circle, if I'm grading your work, we keep on putting coins in the jar. When you are reliable, when you are credible, when you get the names right. And so I think when something is difficult, you can then take a coin out of the jar, but you need to put coins in the jar to start off with.
Can you share your perspective on standardized testing?
Standardized testing, it does have a place, right? I think it can be inherently problematic unless you've got the resources to go through it, and it has a very small kind of impact for most people. So for example, I have a doctorate from a good university. I came to America. I had to pay lots of money to do a 4-hour reading and writing test, right? I was like, I had to do a standardized test. It was a waste of everybody's time. There was another test that I did, and I came out with a certain grade, and it's hard not to kind of like focus on that, so I find it can be a distraction. I think I'm a big fan of universities becoming test optional, so that if you have done it and you've done well in it, then you can put that forward and say, this is part of my portfolio. If you haven't done it, it's not a negative that you haven't done it. So I like the kind of agency that comes with that. It's one of the few things for me that came out of COVID that was super useful.
Favorite movie?
Favorite movie? That's a tough one. I think this hard about it. I'm probably going to say Aliens, the second one. Sigourney Weaver was robbed of getting an Oscar. And that's probably the movie I've watched the most times. Like if I'm ever on the plane and I don't know what to watch, I always have it on my phone and I watch Aliens. The scene at the end with the mother, I could literally watch like 100 times. Like I like that escapist kind of sci-fi thing.
Favorite colleague?
Favorite colleague? It's hard not to choose Dr. Perry because, like, I worked with him before, but I'm just blessed with people that I work with. You know, I met Miss Valleys and Mr. Seamus in Kansas City when I was grading AP papers because I had a little side piece for the College Board. I also like working with people who are new to the school, like Mr. Widener and Miss Petty, because I find that our paths are going to be tied together because we're both new at the same time about what the roles are.
Do you have any hidden talents you want to share with us?
I mean, hopefully I won't share this with you, but I did karate for 9 years. And I was always that person who did like unusual sports, so hopefully you'll never have to see me do karate, because then it means I'm like defending myself from like an attacker. So we're not gonna do that now, but you know, push comes to shove, there might be like a little kind of roundhouse kick to the head coming out, you know.
What's your go-to dance move?
Go-to dance move? I mean, I could get sturdy, but I just don't think you're ready for it, you know, so we're not going to do it, we're not. I do like a little side step. You want me to do a little kind of, you know, like actually the whoa, you know, that's fine, yeah. It's just to be fun with it, like dancing should be fun, right? And if you can't dance and smile, like, you know, what can you do? Particularly in a school that's full of joy and life, like just do you, whoever you are, just do you.
What is something you wish more people knew about you?
You wish more people knew about me. That one of the reasons I am so open and so transparent is that I hope that by being authentic, people feel safe enough around me to be their full authentic selves. So I talk about what the rabbi said in my marriage ceremony. I talk about my husband and my sister and my mother, and I hope that enables other people to feel safe enough to be their selves. I'm not trying to show off or have some sort of white supremacist culture, but I'm trying to be vulnerable to show people that it's okay to be vulnerable with me too.
If you could switch lives with one person for a day, who would it be and why?
My sister. My sister lives in Sydney. She has like the most amazing job. So you can come past. She basically, because Australia is so big, it has like 25 million people of this massive kind of landmass. She works with helping people who design drones to go across Australia. Because you can go on Amazon and say, hi, I want a packet of Diet Coke or something. Somebody still has to deliver that. Ultimately, you don't want a human kind of driving that, so they're setting up all these drones to go across the country to deliver it. I'm always like, oh my God. And I never know enough about her role, so I talk with my sister who lives in Sydney.
What's your dream holiday?
My dream holiday is with all my family at the same time. I think because we're spread over the globe, I didn't want to grow up and become like a rock star or an astronaut. I wanted to be like in my house eating snacks with like dogs at my feet. And now I kind of miss my family, my mom, my mother-in-law, my sister, just everybody being in the same place. Maybe around a pool, you know? So that's my dream family. Just look at that stillness, you know? I'm not a roller coaster kind of guy, you know? You can come past. This is great. Yeah, I'm sorry for disturbing you, yeah? Yeah, thank you. Have a nice day.
Have you had any funny or embarrassing moments in front of your students so far?
No, but in front of the staff I have. So Miss Kia Kanai, she'll tell you this, I'm sure she will, I love her. But I did try and park my car once, and it wasn't the best. And she did promise not to tell anybody. And then obviously when we went to the administrative team, the first thing that she did was tell everybody about my parking. And so now there's an ongoing joke about not parking next to me just in case I kind of scratch your car. So, and then part of this wasn't my fault, I swear this wasn't my fault. Part of the trim fell off the side of my car, and so now everyone believes I've been in an accident, and I was like, it just fell off, I don't know where it is. So now I have this like reputation as a bad driver, so I think I might go to that, you know, that health class in the lecture theatre, like I think I might just sit in the back and try and like get some more ideas.
What's the most difficult part of your job?
I think it's the balance. I think it's, you could spend the entire job supporting students, you could spend the entire job supporting faculty, you can spend the entire job responding to families. So it's constantly going, these things are coming to me, but these are things that are important on my list. So balancing, you know, the three kind of communities that I serve.
What's the most rewarding part of your job?
I think, I really don't mind a schedule change. And I really like listening to students kind of say like, this is where I am now, and it's helping support them kind of on their pathway. I really like the connection with the family, I like the connection with the student, getting to know them, and then doing a schedule change actually feels like it can have a big impact on someone's life. by saying, look, I believe in you, give it another couple of weeks, and they come back and say, actually, I'm not going to drop that mathematics course. Like, thank you for that little bit of encouragement. I feel like I've set them on a path that may be minuscule in these 2 weeks, but for 3 years could have a really big impact on their life. So I actually quite enjoy the schedule changes.
Why mathematics?
For me, it's an equalizer. So my mother, when she arrived in England when she was 15, couldn't speak a word of English. And mathematics was a way that she could communicate that she kind of like worked hard. And I do think whoever you are, if you want to learn mathematics, then actually there's we call it like a low floor, high ceiling that you can get in there, you can get involved in. Even if you've spent 2 weeks out because you've had COVID, you can still come back and pick up something new, and it doesn't see your skin color or your religion or your wealth. It's just like, how hard do you work and how creative can you be?
So,
Not that we walk out. Ooh. Go on.
share with us your best joke.
This is a good one, right? So you might want to just be steady here, okay? You ready for this one? So, what do you call One Direction after Zayn left?
I don't know.
0.8 direction. Because there are 5 of them and it's 20%, and so when you lose 20%, you get 0.8. Because you're like, what is it? Yeah, I think that's hilarious, right? Good dad joke. There we go.
Describe what comfort looks like to you.
I think when my dogs are settled, I think my dogs are like a representation of like who we are. So when our home is busy and there's visitors and things, the dogs are going crazy. I think when my dogs are asleep, I know that like my soul is at peace. So I think that we've always named our dogs after cars. So we currently have Tesla, who's 7, and Bentley, who's 14 and a half. And before that we had Mercedes. And before Mercedes there was Aston. And so when I know that I'm at home and I'm at peace and I'm still, my dogs are also at home and at peace. Hi, Joe Dilks.
How did I know that was you?
It's my British tones.
Yeah.
How are you?
Good, how are you?
I'm embarrassed by this film, but I'm going to keep going with it, you know?
Okay, Dr. Francis-Maurer. Lastly, name something you're very excited about.
I really am very excited about the graduation of the class of 2027. I kind of, full transparency, when I got the job, I was like, oh, 9th grade, like, let me learn a bit more about that. Like it was a bit awkward. These 9th graders are by far, and this is the hill I'm gonna die on, they are the best grade in the school. They are the best behaved, they are the politest. You know, you go into an auditorium with them and they are just the nicest people. And it is such a privilege to be able to like see them through the 4 years. Like I'm not like this 9th grade specialist. I'm gonna build the relationships, and at some point, I'm doing a graduation speech. I've got like a funky hat because I'm a doctor, which I'll show you at some point. But that really excites me. And like even on a tough day, and I think it'll be raining in November, knowing that these kids will be graduating in 4 years and I can support them on that journey, really just, it makes me very excited.
That concludes our 73 questions. Dr. Francis-Maurer for Eastside.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure talking to you.